Welcome to the Pool Operators Club podcast, where we dive deeper into the pool topics you want to hear. We're here to support all commercial pool operators, large and small. If there's a topic or issue you would like us to address in the future, then please email us at contact@pooloperators.club. Hello and welcome to episode 2. Temporary pop-up pools. Are they fit for purpose? My name's Andrew Gaffey.
My name's Martin Hardy.
And we're here today to do a deep dive into some of the latest advice that's come out from Swim England, the STA and Swim Wales regarding the suitability of temporary pop-up pools for use in commercial settings. So that could be swimming lessons primarily, school settings and things like that. And there are issues in this report that we're just going to take a little bit of a deep dive into just to demonstrate some of the questions they've raised. And the advice that they're giving is that these pools are not really suitable for commercial settings. So we'll try and explain a bit about why that is and what could possibly be needed to overcome some of those challenges. So I'm with Martin today, and Martin's got a lot of experience in health and safety and facility management, and my background's a bit more to do with water treatment. So we're going to, the first topic really that comes up in this advice, Martin, is hygiene seems to be the number one issue, doesn't it? Water hygiene and bacteriological quality of the water. And that seems to be where most of the concerns are. Because by definition, these pop-up pools seem to be just a glorified domestic pool that you perhaps would erect in the garden, maybe with some slight modifications to that. So really, the number one, if we talk about the number one issue, which is the water quality and the water hygiene, particularly if you're trying to put through perhaps dozens of children in swimming lessons through that pool every day, what are the consequences of that, and what are the design features of that pool? How can it deal with that number of bathers every day? And I think the first question that comes up is filtration quality, really. You've got a pop-up pool there. It may be designed with or built with a small sand filter or a cartridge filter. What are some of the major disadvantages with that, Martin?
Yeah, I mean, the main focus, Andrew, as you well know, is that we're talking about a domestic product which is being brought into the commercial world. There's plenty of schools looking into these pop-up pools, swim schools as well, private swim schools run by individuals or through franchise networks or whatever. Mm-hmm. This is all, obviously, as we know in the industry, this has come about through lack of pool space.
Yeah.
So we've got tons of people out there which are looking at a life skill, i.e. swimming, and water space is being greatly reduced. The major concern with these pop-up pools is actually the plant. You know, they're built to actually cater for 5 or 6 members of your family going in the pool probably once a week or something like that, twice a week maybe.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they've gone into an environment whereby we could be looking to swim 50 to 100 clients per day. And yeah, it is a lot. And initially, you know, even if you look at the plant associated with these types of pool, they just cannot cater for the volume of people that are going to go through it. And as you mentioned earlier, the hygiene was the key thing. You know, as an example, a lot of these pools are looking at usage of cartridge filters and things like that.
Yeah.
Now, you know, you're talking about can filter down a cartridge to 20 to 60 microns, something like that. Our conventional SAM filters will filter down to about 10 micron, obviously without the use of a flocculant or a coagulant.
Yeah.
And we've got little things like cryptosporidium, which comes in at the size of 3 to 5 microns. So at 20 to 60, these filters have got no chance at all in catching whatever pollution's in your pool. Now, that's obviously a major concern, because not only is that making the clients that are swimming in the pool vulnerable, it's making the teachers vulnerable. And if you're running your own swim school, or if you're a head teacher of a school, that should be primarily your focus, is that you're potentially going to harm the people that are getting into your water space. Yeah. So, you know, that is just a major consideration. I mean, we've got loads of topics in terms of bather loads, filtration, all that kind of stuff. But that's the major concern for me, is that the plant associated with these pools is not designed to cater for the bather load that's going to go in them.
And I could see where you mentioned cartridge filters. So these are these type of pleated polyester filters, aren't they? Look a bit like an oil filter in a car, don't they?
Yeah.
And they've got a high surface area. But to clean those, really, you're just removing them and jet washing or washing them off, aren't you? Or soaking them in a purpose-made bin.
Which creates a problem in itself, as you know, because that's geared to exposure.
Yeah.
So somebody has physically got
Yeah.
to change those filters. Somebody's physically got to clean them.
That's
In the
right.
commercial world that me and you are mainly associated with, we're talking about contained vessels. We're talking about vessels that you don't really have to access at all on a regular basis. So,
Yeah.
you know, we've got major problems there. Use of PPE, use of mats, all that kind of stuff. That bacteria is basically being housed in that cartridge, and you're going to have to clean it.
Yeah. A good thought.
Yeah, well, no, it's a frightening thought,
There's
really.
That's right. And what's just cropped up in my mind as well is that if you had a sand filter, like in a normal commercial pool, for example, and when you're backwashing that filter, you're losing an amount of pool water that you have to replenish, which is good, because we should be using, according to PUTAG, about 30 litres per bather of fresh water to replace and keep the pool water in good condition. So by having a cartridge filter, you're not really getting rid of any water from the pool, are you really?
No.
So you would then have to consciously dump water as well. So having a cartridge filter shouldn't be seen as a water-saving device. You still need to dump that water, don't you?
Yeah.
So that's just something to consider that popped up in my mind with cartridge filters.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is with the filtration side and the pool plant side is that a lot of these pop-up pools are not coming with auto-dosing systems either.
Yeah.
So technically speaking, what we're doing here is we're manually dosing. So again, from a PUTAG perspective, 3 times per day testing as a minimum requirement with an auto-doser.
Yeah.
These pools are technically being manually dosed. So you're looking to have to test these pools every 2 hours. So,
quite
from an operational perspective, not only are you teaching or you've got a teacher in the pool, you've got to have somebody that's actually testing this water on a regular basis as well.
Yeah.
So operationally, it becomes a headache straight away.
Yeah. And then you've got to adjust the water.
Yeah.
And, if you're loading chemicals into skimmer baskets or putting tablets into skimmer baskets because you haven't got a dosing system, then really there shouldn't be anybody in that pool or around that pool whilst you're doing that.
No, so you're looking at downtime again. So from out of your schedule of maybe 8 hours a day of potentially pool opening, you're looking to shut to give this pool time to replenish in order to bring your chlorine levels back up.
Yeah.
So, it's not just about all the technicalities that are out there at the moment, which are quite frightening. These are just really basic things that pool operators, swim school owners, headmasters, they should be looking at these things before they actually give the go-ahead for these pop-up pools to be installed in their facilities.
Yeah. I know over the years, I've been called out to a few of these types of pools, mainly because of water quality issues. One that seemed to crop up fairly often was biofilm contamination. So this is where bacteria can grow in areas of the pool that might not get well chlorinated or where the water doesn't move very much. And you get a slimy coating on some of the surfaces of the pool or the pipework. And then you get bacteria like Pseudomonas that can grow in those biofilms and remain protected from chlorine. And it can become quite a big problem to a point where you get a bad bacteriological result and you've got to close the pool.
Yeah.
And that really is because, of the filtration quality, not just the disinfection issue. The two problems compound each other. So what generally happens is the filtration quality is not fine enough to remove all this debris from the water. You're only getting down to 20 microns if you're lucky. And all this debris stays in the system, going round and around the pool, and eventually creates a nice medium for bacteria to proliferate on. So that's one issue. And then the other one is that because you're perhaps hand dosing or using tablets in skimmer baskets to dose the pool, there will undoubtedly be periods where the chlorine goes too low, certainly in some of the darkest, deepest corners of the pool.
Yeah.
And then that's where these biofilms really take off because they're not getting chlorinated. So you've got those two problems interrelated. Lack of filtration quality, providing food for bacteria, and then chlorine not reaching the corners of the pool. The circulation isn't good enough. And I think that's what I was going to lead on to next, is that if these are primarily built for domestic purposes, then they're going to have circulation pumps on these pools that are maybe only turning over the whole of the pool water in 5-6 hours.
Well, if that, and generally, if these pools are say around about 8x4 in size, you'd be looking to try and establish a turnover at about 1.5 hours, something like that. Yeah. Well, you're not going to be able to do that. So these pools they're not replenishing. They're not having time to replenish. They're not reacting to changes in the pool environment itself. So they're not reacting to increases in bather load or things like that, which again, adding on, keeping things really basic, is adding to the pollution that's going through the pool.
Yeah.
The pollution, as you rightly said, is a food basically for certain bacteria that is in the pool.
Yeah.
Biofilms in particular. We're kind of like fighting a losing battle with this right from the start. That's before you got to the health and safety side of it.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is in our opinion, these kind of products they're just not fit for purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. You think about a swimming pool, if you look at the PUTAG guidelines and you do the calculations for water treatment and filtration area, there's just no way a pool that can take that many bathers in a day, maybe 50 odd, 60 bathers, by that definition, it can't be a pop-up facility, really, can it? The filters are too big, the equipment's going to be too big. It's not really a pop-up that you need. It's something a bit more substantial. We can have a look at that in a minute, but I know we were working earlier on some figures just to demonstrate this issue as what kind of turnover, what kind of filtration area, or how much chemicals, can you expect to use in a day if you're a swim school, for example, using one of these pools. But perhaps before we get to that, perhaps we should just cover the safety. So we've gone from the filtration disinfection onto the safety of these pools and the structure. How are these pools built? I think the majority of them tend to be either panel or almost like a bag-in-a-box type.
Well, it's a frame with an actual bag lining in it.
Yeah.
So the other basic concerns with that are the strength of the structure and the integrity of the structure.
Yeah.
So where we've got like 5 to 10 family members swimming in it in a week, and we haven't got a huge amount of turbidity in the water and things like that. Once we start putting 50, 60 people through these particular pools in a day, turbidity levels are going to increase, pressure is going to increase on the structure. Have these structures been stress tested? Can they handle the volume of people that are going through that pool? And from a stress test perspective, have manufacturers gone the whole hog and they've had these walls tested based on the fact that there's going to be X amount of clients swimming through this pool in any given 24-hour period? So we're only scraping the surface here. I mean, we can go into it deeper, but I think the people that are listening to this hopefully are people that just want to understand some of the information and guidance that's going out there, which is good. Don't get me wrong. All these organisations are there to protect people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But we're more concerned with the nitty-gritty of it. We're concerned with digging into the depths of that, but giving people out there some basic guidance in relation to the headings that all these kind of PUTAG, STA, Swim England, Swim Wales, all these type of organisations, which, in all fairness to them, are looking at the health and welfare, but they're not going into the nitty-gritty of it all and explaining to the layman out there, which we don't mean with any disrespect, by the way, but explaining to the layman out there, somebody that's got their own swim school, a head teacher that's not really familiar with pools and how they work, they need to know a bit more in terms of, well, what do they mean by this? And the whole purpose for me of the Pool Operators Club is to actually answer those kind of questions and to give people a bit more basic knowledge in terms of what they're looking for. Because your business is at risk and your reputation is at risk, your school's at risk if these particular facilities fail.
Yeah.
At some other point, we'll go into the risks associated with this and what it might mean from a health and safety perspective and a HSE investigation if things go
Liability.
wrong, all that kind of stuff. What could go wrong? And we're not scaremongering. No, we worked in this industry long enough. I mean, my basic philosophy, and yours certainly is, we want kids to swim. And there are certainly a lot of questions that haven't been answered as far as above ground pools are concerned.
Yeah.
Or pop-up pools, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. And it's the temporary nature of the pool, isn't it? Like you say, often it's a framed pool, maybe panels or, like say, the bag-in-a-box type of construction. So with that, you've got complications in terms of rescue, haven't you? If you've got to get a child or an adult out of that pool in a hurry, maybe you're on your own. Maybe you're just a swimming teacher and that's you. You're just in the building with your few clients. How are you going to physically manhandle and get those people out of the water when you haven't really got a pool side? You've just got a frame, an edge of the pool to get over. That's going to be painful.
Well, yeah, and as we discussed,
difficult.
Yeah, we've discussed earlier on, obviously off this pod, is that the risks associated with that in terms of the platform structure itself. So a lot of these above ground pools are going to have a platform structure. What about the integrity of that platform?
Yeah.
What are we going to construct it of? Is it going to be wood? Is it going to be metal? That's a key thing.
Yeah.
And these pools, there's some guidance out there in terms of 1.5 metre all the way around these tanks.
Yeah.
Are people aware of what size platform should actually be going around this tank?
Yeah. No,
You know, and that again boils down to access and egress at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And another thing, which we won't get into now, but there's the disability user side of it as well. Will these platforms cater for disability usage?
Yeah, a very good question.
How do you get people onto the platform? How do you get them off the platform? In the event of emergency, what equipment have we got installed that can actually handle that situation that we might get ourselves into?
Yeah.
Because any of our pool facilities, they can't be a barrier in terms of access
No.
to any individual.
No.
They've got to be accessible to everybody.
Yeah, no, exactly. I heard people say the argument before, well, you look at a hydrotherapy pool, for example, that's a small pool, and quite often they're partially above ground, or let's say they're not a walk-in access, are they? But
No.
by definition, that hydrotherapy pool is there for people with disability problems. Often those pools have got methods to get people in and out. They've got sloping ramps for wheelchairs. They've got lifting equipment. So it's less of a concern because they've got all that equipment installed and ready. Whereas in a pop-up pool, you haven't got that,
No.
have you? So that's something you've got to think about. And it's a big issue, again, for access. Creating equal access for all, isn't it?
Yeah.
So those are the main topics that come up in this report. So number one is hygiene, and number two is safety, physical safety. If we take a look back at hygiene, that's the biggest concern, really. And we just perhaps give an example to some of the listeners of what's required. What have you got to consider if you're thinking of having X amount of swimming lessons per day in these pools, X amount of bathers? How do you work it out to see if the pool filtration and disinfection is going to be sufficient for that number of people? So I think we did a few scribblings earlier on, didn't we, Martin?
And what we're looking to show people here is that, just to give them a bit of an example, based on an 8x4 tank with a 1.2 metre constant depth, the kind of bather load capacity, the circulation rates required, the turnover periods, and just to give them, at the end of this, an idea of kind of filter size, the quantity of sand that would be required in these filters.
Yeah.
In order for us to meet, the existing PUTAG guidelines and things like that in terms of filtration.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about an 8x4 metre pool, which gives us a 32 square metre surface area of that pool, because bather safety is based on the square meterage of the surface area of the pool. And at the depth that we talked about of 1.2 metres, the PUTAG guidelines say that we should be looking to limit that space to 2.7 square metres of surface area for every bather. So if we chop that 32 square metres up, divide it by 2.7, then that gives us an answer of 11.85 persons. Well, we have to round that down because we haven't got 0.85 of a person. So we round it down, and that means we can have 11 bathers in that pool as a maximum bathing load at any point in time. So that's the starting point for our calculations, really. And let's say that pool is open for, let's be very moderate and say it's only open 8 hours a day.
Which is very small.
Yeah.
Compared to, our commercial background, whereby our pools, as we might have mentioned before, but, we're roughly 15, 16 hours of opening in most commercial settings.
Yeah, that's right. So to get the daily maximum, because that's different. So the daily maximum is taken as being about 50% of the instantaneous bather load number of 11 multiplied by 8 hours per day. Okay. Yep. So we've got 44 persons per day.
Per 8 hours of opening.
Per 8 hours, yeah, that's right. So the next one is, how do we then size the water treatment system? So to get the circulation rate, we're looking at the maximum instantaneous bather load, which is 11 persons, and we're going to multiply that by 1.7 cubic meters. So where does that 1.7 come from? So it's in the PUTAG book, and it's the recommended volume of water we need to treat per hour for every person in that pool. So in other words, it's 11 persons in this case, multiplied by 1.7, which means we've got 19 cubic meters an hour of circulation rate. Okay, that's how much we're going to push through, how much we're going to need the pump to deliver and the filter to filter. So 19 cubic meters an hour. So what's the next step then? So we need to know then what size filter do we need for that circulation rate. So with filter sizing, we want to make sure, because it's a commercial pool, that we're keeping within the medium rate filtration band, which is 10 to 25 cubic meters per square meter per hour. So how do we do that? So I did some calculations earlier, not to bore you with all the calculations, but if we take a 1 meter diameter filter, sand filter, that 1 meter diameter sand filter is going to have a surface area of 0.78 square meters. Yeah. Which means if we take the 19 cubic meters an hour and divide it by 0.78 square meters, it's going to give us a filtration speed of 24.35 cubic meters per square meter per hour. Okay. But it's basically the 24.35, that means we've just about met the medium rate filtration limit of 25. So that's great. A 1 meter diameter filter is going to serve that pool well. If it was me, I'd want it to be slightly slower than that, just to get better water quality. Maybe get it down to 20 cubic meters per square meter per hour, but you'll need a bigger filter.
Well, the key question then is these pop-up pools and the plant associated and supplied with them.
Yeah.
Does it actually supply them with a 1 meter diameter sand filter?
Yeah.
And the answer to that in the majority of cases is no. It's a cartridge filter. So, we're looking at commercial spec now.
Yeah.
And the key question that listeners need to be aware of is, when they're talking to suppliers, what is the size of the filter that you are going to supply me? And bearing in mind, this is only based on an 8x4 pool.
Yeah, that's right.
And the likelihood is that the filter that they're going to supply them with is nowhere near that size.
No.
But again, I think you're going to go on now to give them some idea about quantity of sand and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So if we look at a 1 meter diameter filter, and typically you'll be looking at a bed depth of at least 1,000 millimeters or a meter. And that bed depth might be made up of a bit of support gravel, a bit of coarse sand, and then probably 700 mils of filter sand, 600 to 700 mil filter sand. If we work out the volume of that filter and then multiply it by the density of the sand, which is about 1,600 grams per litre of volume. So if we work that out, it's coming out at 1,250 kilograms, which is, 1.25 tons, really, if you want to think about that.
Yeah.
In terms of bags, of 25 kilo bags, that's 50 bags of sand, which is more than a pallet. So it's quite an amount of sand. So you can see that by that calculation, it's not very it's not very portable.
No. And again, we laugh about it, but if from my perspective, if you're somebody looking into this and you're looking into the depth of it and the capacity of these systems with these pop-up pools, how many of those suppliers out there do you think are going to provide you with 50 bags of sand and a filter that's capable of taking 50 bags of sand?
Yeah. Well, from the few sites I visited going back a few years now, when these things just started appearing on the market, they were quite commonly installed with a bit of a 30-inch, or maybe if you were lucky, a 42-inch domestic filter. Now, a 42-inch domestic filter is around about 1 meter diameter.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they only have a bed depth of about 400, 500 mil if you're lucky.
And we know with the PUTAG guidance that's out there, we're looking at a minimum filter depth on the commercial pools of 800 mil.
That's right.
And that's scientifically proven from a filtration perspective, to actually remove potential pollution that's coming into the pool.
Yeah.
So we're well short.
We are. And then there's the final hurdle to get through, which is if you think these portable pools are often being accommodated on car parks or a sports field, a bit of an area with a school that's been cordoned off. And so the last hurdle to get across is the fact that you've got to backwash this sand filter as well. And when you're backwashing a sand filter, you always want to backwash it normally quite a bit faster than you do when you're circulating the water. So, for example, that 1 meter diameter filter being backwashed at a rate of 30 cubic meters per square meter per hour, we're getting technical again, really, you're looking at needing 2 circulation pumps. So your circulation pump we talked about before should be capable of 19 cubic meters an hour. But when you're backwashing, you're going to need about 30, minimum, really. So you really need a second circulation pump that you can switch on during the backwash. And then you've got the water to deal with as well from that backwash.
Where's your wastewater going? How much wastewater is it generating?
Yeah.
And the simple question, can your drain take the capacity of water that's going to be dumped in it within a minute and a half, something like that?
Exactly. Yeah. So we're not talking about a little roll-up blue hose going down a drain here. The actual flow of water to drain would be 500 litres a minute for that 1 metre diameter filter. That's half a tonne of water a minute going down the drain. So that's the big question. Can your drain take 500 litres a minute? If it can't, then you can't put that size of filter in.
No. You can't put the pool in, basically, because you can't. No. You've got to backwash at least once a week, as we know, based on guidelines.
Or the way around that would be to have perhaps 2 filters, and you're backwashing one at once, and you're going to split that volume roughly in half.
Yeah.
So it's 250 litres a minute. So that's the way around it. But again, it's not very pop-up if you've got 2 or 3 filters to try and get around the drainage problem.
There's a bit of maths involved there, but you need to do the maths in order to actually get to the nitty-gritty of what size filter do we need, what's the pump capacity, what's the drainage capacity in terms of wastewater.
Yeah.
And, that the guidance is good, fantastic, don't get me wrong, but they don't go into that much detail. And the people that are going to invest in these pools, they need to know these kind of things.
No, they do.
And we're only highlighting one area.
Yeah, that's right. And this kind of content is in the pool plant operators course, isn't it? It doesn't really explain or highlight the backwash water issue.
No.
Very much. And I think maybe that's something that needs to be considered for the syllabus in the future, because it is an important point. Really, the whole of your filtration plant is going to be limited or have to be designed around how much water you can dispose of.
Yeah.
And work back from that as to how many filters you're going to install. So, that's why consultants exist as well, to help you get these things right. That's what the Pool Operators Club is here for as well, to get a bit granular on these subjects and try and provide some practical sort of...
We've done to some people, that might be quite technical maths.
Yeah.
It was to us when we first started, but you've got no pain, no gain, as they say. You've got to do those calculations in some form to appreciate how big your system should be, what's its capabilities, can it do what it needs to do, all based on the numbers that, as we gave an example. I mean, we were only dealing with an 8x4 by 1.2 pool.
Yeah.
And I mean, these kind of figures will alter with scale and volume of water and all that kind of thing. But what you've got to realise is that as that figure increases, so does your filter capacity, so does your pump capacity. Yeah. They all go hand in hand. That's the more people, the bigger the pool, the bigger your plant needs to be.
Yeah. And if you're going to compromise on any area of that, really, you've got to cut the bather numbers.
Correct.
Otherwise you're putting water quality at risk, water hygiene at risk. That we've talked about there is the minimum spec that I would, if I was going to design a new pool with a filtration plant, that's the minimum I would be looking for. So if you can't meet that, the only thing you're left with really is to cut the bather numbers, and then therefore you're cutting your capacity to teach swimming. You're going to limit your income, whatever it is, the value of that pool.
Yeah. So
plant investment is a big thing. It's not cheap.
No.
And it needs to be done well if you're going to protect people's hygiene.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we probably need to round it up and say what are the latest statements, really, Martin, and where have they come from? What have you got for us on that?
Yeah, well, we've obviously got PewTag, a valuable source of information. PewTag being the Pool Water Treatment Advisory Group. They issue technical notes based on everything related to pools. The basic guidelines that we're taking here are their technical note 65, which is the hiring out of above ground domestic temporary pools, how to use them and when not to. So that's an invaluable piece of information.
Yeah.
We've obviously got statements, industry partners, temporary pop-up pools position statement, July 24, which was by Swim England, Swimming Teachers Association and Swim Wales as well.
Okay.
Never forget the Welsh. Diolch yn fawr iawn. So, there's all kinds of information out there in terms of these pop-up pools.
Yeah.
I think from our perspective, we're really caring about the situation that swim school owners could put themselves into in terms of vulnerability. Head teachers could in terms of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And, it's all right listening to all these suppliers out there, but a bit of, I think, invaluable information, a bit of maths in terms of sand filter capacities, pump capacities, bather loads and what have you. And I think the Pool Operators Club, that's what we're geared to.
Yeah.
Before you take that ultimate step of investing capital-wise or anything in terms of a swim school business, you need to be aware of what's out there and what you need to be checking for. And I think hopefully that's what we've done in this podcast that we've done.
Yeah, I think so. It'd be nice, perhaps, if we could make a technical note for it, wouldn't it? Just to show those basic calculations, maybe, and we can put something on the Pool Operators Club website.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll round it up for today on that one, Martin. We've got to go. And thanks for listening to the Pool Operators Club podcast. And we'll be back soon with another important topic. And I think the next one coming up is chemical incidents and accidents in swimming pools, and a bit of a dive into some of the causes of those incidents and what we can do about it. Many thanks. We'll catch you soon.
Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. Take care. Bye.
If you found this content helpful, please help us to continue doing more by liking and subscribing to this channel. If you'd like to find out more about the benefits of joining the Pool Operators Club, please head over to pooloperatorsclub.com.